I definitely think, and I often get a question. As a matter of fact, the most popular question I get whenever I do speaking engagements, large team meetings is, if I had to go back in time and give Mike advice that you would wish you had 15, 20 years ago, what would it have been? And the advice I would give myself is, you don't have to be perfect. And if you look at the way we grow up, we compete in sports, we play musical instruments. We always, there's a drive where we want to be the best. And then you get into high school and you're trying to be one of the top students in the class. You're trying to get into college. You're playing sports. Obviously, you want to win. And that same mindset carries over into college as well, because now you're programmed where you want to do well in school and you want to get a job. So if you could imagine a minute, Mark, everybody walks into the workplace and they're really been engineered and trained to be perfect. And to me, that's a very limiting mindset if you are approaching your career with the intent on, I need to be perfect for the next promotion. I need to be perfect for the next opportunity. And what I've really noticed that conservatism begins to work against the true creativity of a new employee. So to me, one of the things that I've learned, and I try to stress upon new employees and folks moving in, take more chances. Making a mistake is not the end of the world. Not learning from that mistake is worse. And you really begin to get more comfortable taking chances. And honestly, it's a shame that you don't really reach this comfort level until you're much later in your career, because I really feel if I known this earlier, I would have been much more bold in terms of the challenges that I've embraced and the chances that I took.
That's absolutely an astute point. I think it's probably something that really hasn't changed much in the past 50 years or so. I can imagine every single one of us going through that exact synopsis that you gave, even from very early on in school, right? Everyone's always, especially in the United States, trying to achieve excellence and be that top performer. So it stifles us when we actually get into the workplace then.
Absolutely. And if you look at the whole premise on a growth mindset, it's not about failing. It's about not taking chances and not being able to learn from them so that you be better, make better decisions as you go forward. And embracing that is really a different change of how you approach your career and how you approach taking chances. And if everybody takes the safe route, unfortunately, you're not going to get the best and the most creativity. So as a leader, and it isn't even just at an employee level, as a leader, we have to make sure that we're creating those operating environments, because if folks are afraid of making mistakes, you absolutely are not getting the best out of your team. You're getting a very safe path. And the way that the industry is moving and the business is moving, the safe path does not get it done. It does not get it done.
Not enough innovation in it.
Absolutely not.
That's really interesting. It's got to be a safe environment for those employees to feel that they're comfortable enough to be able to take that chance or take that risk where they are exposing themselves to potential failure, right? On the flip side, where they can just go along with the status quo and do what's expected of them and stay within their lane, although safer, might not be reaching the full potential of themselves or at the organization.
And actually, what you'll begin to see is, in a lot of cases, not only does it hinder organization creativity, but it also begins to that behavior begins to spread around the rest of the organization. I mean, look at what we're going through now with COVID as an example. One of the most radical impacts, I can say it's the most radical impact to the work environment that I've seen in my, dare I say, 30 years, because at a moment's notice, we've moved into unprecedented work environments. I mean, sure, there were folks that worked from home, but there was always that mix of, I can go into the office, I can go to a conference, I can meet a client, in my case, I could meet a business partner. And within days that stopped. So everybody had to re-engineer on the fly how we engage clients, how we engage partners, how we engaged each other in the workforce, and we didn't have a lot of time to figure it out. And the business world still had to move forward. So you talk about being able to use urgency as the calling card to radically transform. I mean, what we've went through and are going through now with COVID and the impacts, that's a classic example of being able to be flexible and respond. And what we've learned from this, and many of you have heard and read it, we will never go back to absolutely the way it was before this started. And we've learned there are different ways for us to be able to do business, and there are different ways for us to be able to interact with one another. And we're going to take the positive of that along with the positive of the previous, and we're going to have a really interesting work environment as we go forward. I'm a big believer in an employee mentor relationship. Some of the best lessons that I've learned have been from my mentors, and I encourage everyone. Mentorship is something that it requires some effort. I mean, there are folks who look at mentorship as I'm going to come in, I'm going to sit down, and somebody's going to have all the answers. If you have a mentor-mentee relationship, it really is important to put effort into getting something out of it. But that being said, I also am a big believer in reverse mentorship. And for those folks who are not familiar with that, in my case, I have a mentor who has more experience than I do that I look to for career guidance. And in this case, the person works at IBM to help guide me still through the IBM dynamics. But a reverse mentor helps me understand what the generational aspects of what the new employees are looking for when they join IBM. And the important thing is I have to remember that my message has to resonate with everyone. And if my approach or my style or the tools that I use to communicate do not resonate with a new generation of employee, I'm not going to be an effective leader. So I use this reverse mentorship very, very often to test ideas that I have and make sure, does it hit the mark? I mean, the last thing I want to find out is something that I'm very passionate about is missing a third or more of my workforce. That's a problem. And I wouldn't know that until I learned it the hard way, or I ask folks who see things similarly if my approach really makes sense. And this is something that we have to be sensitive to, especially as you get through your career. Mentally, you think that you're still resonating with everyone. And I mean, that's just a natural bias. But as you mature and as you span there are many generations now working for you or working with you, you have to keep that open mind that perhaps some of your approach may not resonate with everyone. And that's just natural. But you also have to be willing to embrace that feedback and incorporate it into your style, or else you're going to end up quickly missing whole segments of your organization in terms of your messaging and aspects of leadership. So I highly recommend that for everyone. And regardless of where you are in your career, there are a lot of different demographics and dynamics of a workforce that's diverse, and you want to make sure that you're representing as much of them as you can. I mean, just to go back and date myself, right? I mean, there was a time where first we had just regular face-to-face meetings, and then obviously emails, and then the in vogue thing after emails was podcasts and blogs. I mean, now the forum of how we communicate with employees can go through LinkedIn, it can go through other forms of social media. So you have to make sure that you're upskilling to be able to continue that dialogue. I mean, when we transferred over in IBM and we began using Slack as opposed to our own internal messaging system, and this was a learning tool for a lot of us. There was a lot of resistance to try something new, to be able to do a different way of communicating and replace something like email. And then you move over into Slack exchanges and team rooms as a way for you to have ongoing interactions with your staff. If you don't evolve, you're just going to get left behind. And what's worse is being left behind and not even knowing that you're being left behind because nobody's telling you this. And that's a sad state to be in as a leader. So continuing to learn and making sure that you understand what it takes to get effective communication. And this is also true externally as well. I deal with, like I said, I deal with a lot of clients and a lot of business partners. Maintaining that rapport with your client base is critical. And as the generations change, the tools that you use to do that are going to change as well. I mean, face-to-face is always paramount, but like we talked about with COVID, getting creative and using video as a forum and WebEx and like what we're doing here. This is all part of the evolution of how we're going to communicate and exchange information as we go forward. And you got to be comfortable with it. If you're not, you better practice, right? You better practice. The last point I'll leave everyone, and this is an important point, is the importance of personal branding. And this, now with social media and with the various forums are out there, social branding, the personal branding on social media is important, not just for you, for your personal career development, but also for the company that you represent, right? Everybody is a messenger now for their company. Everybody is a spokesman for how your company is developing and going forward. And you don't underestimate the opinions that are drawn about companies' perception from what their employees are saying and what their employees are doing. So I encourage everyone to make sure that you become a de facto spokesperson for your company. And yeah, there are the formal spokespeople. I don't mean that, but share some of the innovations that your company is driving in social media forums. Many folks look to what the employees are saying to truly get a sentiment of if the transformation is for real. And that doesn't come from a corporate memo. That comes from what the employees are driving and how it's being driven. So use this social platform that we have now to get your personal branding out there and be a real good representative for the companies that you work for. And I mean, those things are going to work hand in hand with one another in terms of personal branding and being a spokesperson for your company and the good things that your companies are doing.